I had imagined the Aurora Nexus would feel like the heart of civilization. I was wrong. It felt like the heart of politics. The station stretched across space like a silver continent, its endless rings crowded with warships, merchant vessels, and diplomatic cruisers from hundreds of worlds. Every corridor carried unfamiliar languages, strange scents, and species I had only studied in briefing files. Humanity's delegation barely attracted a glance. We were one of the youngest races in the Galactic Council, respected for our potential but trusted with very little. I followed Ambassador Nathan Reynolds into the Grand Council chamber, keeping my eyes forward despite the overwhelming spectacle. Tier upon tier of delegates surrounded a massive circular platform where the fate of entire star systems was debated. At the highest seats sat the ancient powers, including the mighty Asterian Empire. Their arrival silenced the chamber. Princess Emily Arbin entered beside the imperial delegation, carrying herself with effortless confidence. For a brief moment, our eyes met across the hall before the council speaker called the session to order, unaware that the galaxy was only hours away from its greatest crisis. The council speaker raised his crystal staff, and the chamber settled into complete silence. A three-dimensional star map appeared above the central platform, glowing with countless trade routes and military patrol zones. Several systems suddenly turned crimson. Quiet whispers spread through the delegates as encrypted reports streamed across every display. Even the oldest empires stopped speaking. Whatever had happened was serious enough to interrupt the royal bond ceremony, a tradition that had never been delayed in over 1,000 years. 3 days ago, the speaker announced, an unknown organization infiltrated the Helios Defense Archive. The image shifted to a heavily fortified research station surrounded by drifting wreckage. The attackers bypassed every known security protocol and escaped with classified military technology. He paused, allowing the weight of those words to settle over the chamber. We do not know the full extent of what has been stolen. Asterian admirals exchanged uneasy glances. Representatives from dozens of civilizations immediately demanded military action, each insisting that fleets should be deployed before the thieves could disappear beyond known space. Others argued for sealing every hyperspace corridor and searching every civilian vessel entering Council territory. The chamber erupted into overlapping arguments, every delegate convinced their solution was the only reasonable one. I remained silent beside Ambassador Reynolds, watching instead of speaking. Panic spread faster than any virus. Everyone wanted an enemy they could identify, but no one possessed a single confirmed name or location. Whoever had planned this operation understood the Council's habits well enough to predict every response before it happened. The hologram zoomed toward a region near the frontier, where the final transmission from the research station had originated. Then it vanished, replaced by a single line of text. Unknown asset. Location unconfirmed. A chill ran down my spine. That message revealed far more than the delegates realized. Someone had stolen something powerful enough that the Council itself refused to identify it publicly. Whatever was now missing had the potential to change the balance of power across the entire galaxy, and somewhere, someone was already preparing to use it. The arguments continued for nearly an hour. Ancient rivals blamed one another. Military commanders demanded authority to mobilize their fleets, and trade coalitions warned that closing hyperspace routes would cripple half the galaxy's economy. Every proposal relied on overwhelming force. No one questioned whether they were preparing to fight the wrong enemy. Ambassador Nathan Reynolds finally pressed the request crystal embedded in our desk. The speaker acknowledged him with visible reluctance. Humanity rarely addressed the Council during major security debates. The Terran Federation requests permission to speak. A few delegates sighed. Others barely looked in our direction. Reynolds stepped onto the central platform without hurry. His dark diplomatic uniform lacked medals or decorations, making him appear almost insignificant beside the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor surrounding him. Ladies and gentlemen, he began calmly, wars are not won by chasing weapons. They are prevented by understanding the people holding them. The chamber remained silent, though I noticed several delegates exchanging puzzled looks. If this organization bypassed the Council's highest security systems, then they anticipated your defenses. If they escaped without identification, they also anticipated your investigation. Reynolds folded his hands behind his back. Launching fleets blindly will only confirm that your reactions are as predictable as your security. Several senators frowned. We recommend concentrating on intelligence gathering, he continued. Identify the individuals responsible. Learn their motives. Discover who financed the operation. Recovering the technology begins by understanding the people who stole it. For a brief moment, I thought the room might actually consider his advice. Then the murmurs began. A naive proposal. Typical human optimism. They still think diplomacy solves everything. An elderly senator from the Dravian Combine rose first. You ask us to wait while terrorists possess a weapon capable of destabilizing entire star systems? Reynolds met his gaze without hesitation. I ask you to think before firing. Laughter echoed across the chamber. It spread from one delegation to another until the speaker was forced to strike his staff for silence. I remained seated, expressionless, but I had already noticed something everyone else had missed. 3 delegates had not laughed. Instead, they had quietly left the chamber while every eye was fixed on the ambassador. The council session adjourned without a decision. Delegates departed in clusters, each surrounded by advisors, guards, and private security drones. Publicly, they condemned the theft and demanded unity. Privately, they whispered accusations at anyone willing to listen. Aurora Nexus had become a palace of polished smiles hiding sharpened knives. I followed Ambassador Reynolds back toward the Terran embassy, keeping a steady pace while reviewing everything I had observed inside the chamber. The 3 delegates who had quietly slipped away still occupied my thoughts. They had not left in panic. They had left with purpose. That difference mattered. Our embassy occupied a modest section of the diplomatic ring, far smaller than those belonging to the ancient empires. To outsiders it looked ordinary, almost unimpressive. Hidden beneath its quiet appearance, however, were security systems designed by people who trusted mathematics far more than appearances. As the main doors sealed behind us, the atmosphere changed immediately. Diplomatic smiles disappeared. Officers from Terran intelligence emerged from secured corridors carrying encrypted data cores. One of them approached Reynolds without acknowledging me. They moved exactly as predicted, the officer reported. Any surveillance? We have partial tracking on 2 of them. The third vanished after entering a restricted transit hub. Reynolds nodded once. Keep watching. No contact. I continued toward the engineering bay without asking questions. No one stopped me. They never did. Inside the maintenance compartment, I removed the outer casing from the embassy's quantum firewall and began a routine diagnostic. To anyone observing the cameras, I was simply an engineer repairing communication equipment. Hidden behind the console, a second display activated. Sentinel status. Secure. Identity remains classified. I stared at the words for only a second before closing the screen again. Across the compartment, a tiny indicator blinked green. Someone else was watching me. Not because they suspected me. Because they were protecting the secret I had spent my entire life pretending did not exist. And somewhere beyond the embassy walls, the people searching for humanity's greatest weapon were already moving closer without realizing they had been chasing me from the very beginning. That night, Aurora Nexus looked peaceful from the observation deck. Thousands of ships drifted around the station like silent stars, each carrying diplomats, merchants, soldiers, or spies. Distance hid the truth. Beneath the calm surface, encrypted transmissions crossed the station every second, and somewhere among them, conspirators were already coordinating their next move. I finished recalibrating the embassy's defense grid before returning to my quarters. The door sealed behind me with a soft hiss. A second later, the room lights dimmed automatically. Authentication confirmed, an artificial voice whispered. The far wall became a display. General Marcus Hale appeared without introduction. Evening, Jack. General, you watched the council. I did. Your assessment? They read chasing shadows. Whoever stole the technology wanted panic, and they getting exactly that. Hale nodded. So do we. A new image replaced his face. 3 individuals appeared beside dozens of intercepted communications. Our analysts confirmed links between the missing delegates and several shell corporations. They've been moving money through frontier systems for years. Terror financing? Probably. We still don't know who's giving the orders. I folded my arms. And me? The general hesitated. They haven't connected you to the Sentinel program. Yet. No. Silence settled between us. If they discover your identity, he continued, every intelligence service in the galaxy will come looking. Some will want your loyalty. Others will want your body. I already knew the answer. They won't get either. His expression softened only slightly. I know. The display shifted again. A ceremonial invitation filled the screen. Royal bond ceremony. Attendance required. The Asterian Empire refused to postpone it, Hale said. Politics before security. Mistake. Agreed. The transmission ended. I stood alone in the quiet room, staring at my own reflection in the darkened window. To the galaxy, I was still Jack Carter, an engineer assigned to maintain embassy systems. For now, that illusion was holding. But experience had taught me one rule I had never seen fail. Secrets never stayed buried. Eventually, someone always started digging. The royal bond ceremony transformed Aurora Nexus overnight. Corridors that had echoed with political arguments were now lined with banners bearing the silver crest of the Asterian Empire. Musicians rehearsed ancient hymns while servants hurried between reception halls carrying gifts from noble families across known space. The celebration projected confidence, but the extra guards posted at every entrance betrayed the truth. The theft at Helios had frightened even the oldest empire. I arrived with the Terran delegation precisely on schedule. Ambassador Reynolds exchanged formal greetings while I quietly inspected the security network hidden beneath the ceremonial decorations. New sensors had been installed since yesterday, but their coverage contained blind spots large enough for a trained infiltrator to exploit. Either the engineers were careless, or someone wanted those gaps to remain. The Imperial Ballroom shimmered beneath a transparent dome revealing the stars beyond. Representatives from every major civilization gathered around a circular platform where Princess Emily would announce the partner chosen to unite powerful bloodlines and strengthen diplomatic alliances. Noble candidates stood in elaborate ceremonial armor, each surrounded by advisors wearing expressions of absolute confidence. I remained near the outer wall, exactly where a technical advisor belonged. Princess Emily entered as the orchestra fell silent. Her silver gown reflected the light above like flowing starlight, yet her calm expression never changed despite thousands of eyes following her every step. One by one, heralds announced the names of influential nobles competing for her hand. Each bowed with practiced elegance. She acknowledged them politely. Then she kept walking. Confusion spread through the chamber. She passed every noble house, every celebrated commander, every wealthy heir. Finally, she stopped directly in front of me. For one impossible second, neither of us spoke. Then she lifted her eyes and smiled. I have made my choice. Every conversation died instantly. I choose Jack Carter of Earth. The chamber froze. At that exact moment, every light in the ballroom went dark, and somewhere above us, the first gunshot shattered the silence. Darkness swallowed the ballroom, but only for a heartbeat. The gunshot echoed through the dome, followed by the sharp crack of shattering crystal. Every instinct I had buried years ago surged to the surface before my mind could catch up. My body moved on its own. I stepped toward Emily just as a dark figure dropped from the ceiling. A blade flashed through the air, aimed directly at her throat. I caught the attacker's wrist before the weapon reached its target. Bone snapped beneath my grip. The assassin cried out, but I was already moving again. A second attacker emerged from behind a marble pillar, raising a compact energy pistol. I seized the first assassin and hurled him across the platform. His body collided with the gunman, sending both crashing into the ceremonial altar. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as sparks rained across the chamber. The emergency lights flickered to life. Panic exploded around us. Delegates scrambled for cover while royal guards rushed toward the platform, too late to stop the attack. More masked figures appeared among the fleeing guests, their movements disciplined and perfectly synchronized. This had never been a simple assassination. It had been planned with military precision. Emily stared at me, shock replacing her calm expression. "You knew," she whispered. "No," I answered honestly. "I just reacted." The nearest attacker lunged with twin blades. I sidestepped, struck his elbow, then drove my shoulder into his chest. He flew backward into a stone column hard enough to crack it. Another rushed from my left. I disarmed him before he completed the swing and dropped him with a single blow. Silence spread as quickly as the violence. The surviving assassins hesitated. They were professionals. Professionals did not hesitate. One looked directly at me, and I saw fear behind his mask. Not fear of failure, fear of recognition. He activated a smoke charge, and the remaining attackers vanished into the confusion before security forces sealed the exits. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward me. An engineer should not have been able to do any of that. The silence lasted only a few seconds before it shattered beneath hundreds of frightened voices. Imperial guards flooded the ballroom, weapons raised, forming a protective ring around Princess Emily while medics rushed toward the wounded. I remained exactly where I stood. Running would have made me look guilty. Standing still only made everyone stare harder. Captain Barrows, commander of the Royal Guard, stopped 3 meters away. His weapon remained pointed at my chest. "Identify yourself." "Jack Carter, Terran Federation Diplomatic Engineering Division." His eyes narrowed. "Engineers do not disarm elite assassins with their bare hands. I imagine most don't." Emily stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "He saved my life." Barrows never lowered his weapon. "That does not explain what we all witnessed." The attackers had left more than bodies behind. Small metallic devices were scattered across the platform, each no larger than a coin. Intelligence officers immediately surrounded them without touching anything. One technician scanned the nearest object and suddenly looked pale. "Captain, these emitters disabled the palace security grid. Can you identify their origin?" "No markings. Custom built." Ambassador Reynolds finally reached my side. His expression remained calm, but I knew him well enough to notice the warning hidden behind his eyes. "Jack," he said quietly, "say as little as possible." I nodded. The fewer lies I told, the fewer I would need to remember. Across the chamber, investigators examined the dead assassin I had thrown into the ceremonial altar. His mask had cracked during the impact, revealing a small metallic implant behind his left ear. One officer frowned. "I've seen this design before." Another looked up sharply. "Where?" "The Helios Defense Archive." Every conversation stopped. The same technology, the same unknown organization. The assassination and the theft were connected. Captain Barrows slowly lowered his weapon, but suspicion remained in his expression. "You were standing exactly where the princess chose to stop." "I was. And seconds later, assassins attacked." "Yes." He studied me for another long moment. "I don't believe in coincidences, Mr. Carter." Neither did I, and that worried me far more than his accusation ever could. The ballroom remained under lockdown until dawn. Every guest was questioned before being allowed to leave, while security teams searched every corridor connected to the attack. No additional assassins were found. They had vanished as if the station itself had swallowed them. I sat inside a temporary interview room with Ambassador Reynolds beside me. Captain Barrows paced slowly across the floor, holding a tablet filled with surveillance reports. "The attackers entered through maintenance corridors," he said. "Someone inside the palace granted them access." Reynolds folded his hands. "Then your investigation should begin with your own personnel." "It will." Barrows stopped in front of me. "But first I need to understand you. I am not sure I can help. You moved before the first shot was fired. I heard something. No. He enlarged a security recording. You reacted 0.2 of a second before the weapon discharged. The footage played again. He was right. I had already been moving. My body had recognized the threat before conscious thought caught up. I remained silent. Before Barrows could press further, the interview room door opened. Princess Emily entered alone. You may leave us. Barrows looked genuinely surprised. Your Highness. That was not a request. After a brief hesitation, both he and Reynolds stepped outside, leaving the room sealed behind them. Emily crossed the room without speaking. She placed a small metallic object on the table between us. It was one of the devices recovered from the assassins. I've seen this symbol before, she said quietly. A tiny engraving covered the underside. 3 interlocking circles surrounding a vertical line. I felt my heartbeat slow. Not because I recognized it. Because I almost did. Our intelligence archives contain the same mark, Emily continued. Every record connected to it has been erased. She looked directly into my eyes. Someone wants this forgotten. Probably. You Aaron, T surprised. I've learned that erased files usually hide dangerous truths. She nodded slowly. Then perhaps we should stop asking what was stolen. Her voice dropped almost to a whisper. And start asking why they tried so hard to kill me the moment I chose you. Emily and I left the palace before sunrise under heavy guard, but neither of us believed the escorts would stop whoever was behind the attack. Someone had infiltrated the most secure ceremony in the Empire. That meant the conspiracy reached far beyond hired assassins. The Imperial Archives became our first destination. Hidden beneath the palace, they contained records older than most civilizations. Emily personally unlocked sealed files connected to the symbol we had recovered from the assassin's device. Most entries had been erased, yet fragments remained. The emblem belonged to an organization known only as Project Ascension. Officially, it had never existed. Unofficially, it had received funding from rogue scientists, influential council senators, and private military contractors for more than 20 years. Their objective appeared repeatedly across scattered reports. Sentinel Reconstruction Initiative. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Emily looked at me. You know that name. I've heard it before. Where? I don't remember. That answer was true, but incomplete. The word Sentinel stirred memories that refused to become clear. Faces without names. Laboratories. Endless training. White lights reflecting from steel walls. Every image disappeared before I could grasp it. An encrypted transmission interrupted us. The palace security network had intercepted messages between several council officials and an abandoned research facility orbiting an uninhabited moon. The files confirmed our worst suspicion. The stolen Helios technology had already arrived there. Project Ascension intended to combine it with classified human research. Not to build a weapon. To manufacture thousands of them. Emily stared silently at the final report. If they succeed, they won. Stop with one army, I finished. Before either of us could speak again, unbearable pain exploded inside my head. I collapsed to one knee as invisible voices echoed through my mind. Sentinel protocol detected. Remote activation initiated. Primary unit identified. Designation: Jack Carter. For the first time in my life, I understood why humanity had hidden me from the galaxy. I wasn't simply protecting the Sentinel program. I was the last Sentinel. Every nerve in my body felt as though it were burning. I collapsed against the archive wall while fragments of forgotten memories flooded my mind. Steel corridors, endless combat drills, scientists watching from behind reinforced glass. A voice repeating the same command over and over. A sentinel obeys. My vision blurred as another message echoed inside my head. Combat protocols online. Eliminate hostile targets. Mission priority. Secure Project Ascension. No, I whispered. Emily dropped beside me, ignoring the guards who aimed their weapons in confusion. Jack, look at me. I couldn't. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. Every instinct urged me to stand, to fight, to destroy everything between me and the source of the command. Whoever controlled the signal wasn't trying to kill me. They were trying to turn me back into their weapon. Jack, Emily grabbed my shoulders. You are not what they made. The words cut through the noise. For the first time, I saw something stronger than the programming buried inside me. Choice. I had spent years living as an ordinary man. I had laughed, repaired engines, shared meals with friends, and believed my past was behind me. Those memories were real. They belonged to me, not to the people who had created the Sentinel. I stood. The voices fell silent. Then I smiled. They made one mistake. Emily looked at me. They taught me how to fight, I said. They never taught me how to surrender. We traced the activation signal to the abandoned research station orbiting the dead moon. Imperial and Terran forces launched a joint assault while I entered the command center alone. The mastermind waited beside the control core. You were built to obey, he said, activating the final command. Nothing happened. I choose who I am. One strike shattered the control console. A second destroyed the transmitter. The station's systems failed instantly as explosions raced through its reactors. Project Ascension died with its secrets. And for the first time in my life, I knew I had defeated something far more dangerous than any enemy. I had defeated the weapon inside myself. The command center collapsed behind us as emergency shuttles carried the survivors away from the dying station. By the time we returned to Aurora Nexus, the news had spread across the galaxy. Project Ascension no longer existed. The senators who had financed it were under arrest. The rogue scientists had confessed before the evidence could bury them forever. The Galactic Council reconvened that same evening. This time, every seat was occupied. No one whispered. No one laughed. I stood beside Ambassador Reynolds and Princess Emily while the recovered files were projected above the chamber. The stolen Helios technology. The conspiracy. The recordings from the abandoned laboratory. Finally, the last classified file appeared. Sentinel program. A silence heavier than fear settled over the chamber. Ambassador Reynolds stepped forward. The Terran Federation has hidden this truth for many years. The Sentinel program was humanity's greatest military mistake. We created living weapons to defend our future, but we realized too late that no civilization should possess such power. The next image showed me, not as an engineer, as Subject Zero, the last surviving Sentinel. Gasps echoed through the hall. Several delegates instinctively moved away. Others simply stared. I was created, I said quietly, but I chose who I would become. No one interrupted. I could have obeyed the commands implanted inside me. Instead, I destroyed the people who tried to use them. Emily stepped beside me. He saved my life. Her voice carried across the chamber. He also saved every civilization represented here. The fear in the delegates' eyes slowly changed. Not into trust, into understanding. They finally realized humanity had never hidden the Sentinel because it wanted power. Humanity had hidden it because it feared what that power could become. For the first time since arriving on Aurora Nexus, the Council did not see me as a weapon. They saw me as proof that conscience could be stronger than programming. And that choice, not strength, was what had saved the galaxy. The Council expected humanity to demand influence after the conspiracy was destroyed. Many believed we would use the truth about the Sentinel program to force new treaties in our favor. They were wrong. Ambassador Reynolds stepped onto the central platform one final time. The Terran Federation has reached its decision. Every delegate listened in complete silence. Beginning today, every classified Sentinel record will be released to an independent council commission. Every laboratory connected to the program will be dismantled under international supervision. Every remaining prototype, design, and research archive will be destroyed. The chamber remained still. Several senators looked genuinely confused. You are surrendering your greatest military advantage? One of them asked. Reynolds answered without hesitation. No civilization should ever create another Sentinel. The words echoed through the hall. Human engineers immediately transmitted authorization codes to council inspectors. Hidden databases opened one after another, revealing decades of classified research. Facilities across Terran space were permanently shut down while automated systems erased the last surviving development files. Nothing was withheld, nothing was hidden. Then Reynolds presented humanity's final proposal, a new interstellar treaty. The hologram above the chamber displayed its title, Convention Against Living Weapons. Every member civilization would prohibit the creation of genetically engineered soldiers, artificial biological weapons, and any future Sentinel-like program. Independent inspections would guarantee compliance without exception. One by one, the delegates stood, not to oppose it, to approve it. For the first time since humanity had joined the Galactic Council, every civilization voted together. When the final result appeared, the chamber erupted into applause. I looked toward Emily. She smiled quietly. We finally ended it. I nodded. No. I gently took her hand. We made sure no one else would ever have to begin it again. Months later, peace had returned to the galaxy, but none of us were the same. The Asterian Empire and the Terran Federation signed the first Joint Security Alliance, ensuring that no civilization would ever again create living weapons in secret. As the representatives applauded, Emily quietly reached for my hand. This time, I didn't let go. You still think you're just an engineer? She asked with a smile. I always will. She laughed softly. Good. The galaxy already has enough legends. As we walked from the council chamber together, an elderly historian finished the final page of his chronicle. We believed the princess had chosen an ordinary human. Only later did we learn she had chosen humanity's last living weapon. Yet history will remember neither his strength nor his victories. It will remember that, when given every reason to become a monster, Jack Carter chose to remain human. In the end, the greatest power in the galaxy was never the Sentinel. It was the heart that refused to obey.